Thank you very much for the kind invitation. So I would like to share the next few minutes with you why I thought, after being an operator essentially for the past 16 years, this year would be the best year to focus full-time being a venture capitalist and now full-time join the venture capital firm that I co-founded 9 years ago. And a few things we looked into. For example, we actually looked into every single cap table of the German startups and looked who are the VCs and then ultimately who are the LPs, so the limited partners, the investors into the VCs, and then who ultimately owns the German startups. And what you find out is that actually US pension funds ultimately own about 10% of every single startup in Germany through the VCs they invest in, while the German pension funds own 0.2%. So out of close to 50 billion in value of our private startups in Germany, a meager 94 million goes to our retirees. If you divide that by the 21 million retirees, that's 4.5 euros, more or less. That's the equivalent value of one small bubble tea. That's how much we value our pensioners and how much we let them participate in the technological advance that we definitely have. One small, not a large one, but because a large one would already be 6 euros. One small bubble tea per year. Congratulations. That's a little bit surprising, especially because VC is actually, if you look at it, the asset class in alternatives with the highest returns. It's also maybe contrary to what you hear. It performs better than VC in the US. Yes, we have smaller exits, but we also have more capital efficient companies and lower entry valuations. And even if you take a long time, 10-year government bonds, even in the high interest rate, significantly underperform venture capital. And then I really love this study from JP Morgan done for over 30 years. If you add alternatives, and especially venture capital, to your portfolio, it not only reduces volatility, but it also increases return. So knowing all of that, and we've seen that before, no surprise that one of the most rational and facts-driven investors, Yale University, last year has allocated 24% to venture capital only. And then I put, like as an example, a German pension fund, which is pretty exemplary, 73% bonds, roughly 21% equities. And now let's do a little experiment. Let's assume you were a family office in '96, you were lucky and had 200 million in cash, maybe out of a sale. Where would you stand today, 28 years later? When on the one hand side you invest seemingly safe with bonds and public equity, and on the other side you take 24% of your assets over the past 28 years and allocate this to venture capital. You would then you would have today 4.6 billion versus 700 million. So your missed opportunity is essentially 6.5x or 3.9 billion. And I want to give you another kind of argument. Investing only in safe assets would ultimately actually lead to a lack of innovation, lack of financing startups, and that way increase the risk of your seemingly safe assets like real estate and government bonds. So even if you primarily invest into them, you should, as a hedge, definitely also invest significantly into venture capital. And now another thing is we always say, oh, the Americans are so much more entrepreneurial. You know what? It's not true anymore. Our combined efforts in Europe, in schools, in universities, have paid off. We have more founders as of now every year than the US in Europe. This is pretty astonishing. So the basis is there. The entrepreneurial spirit is actually here. And that's why McKinsey, they just released a study. They say on the lower bond, they estimate that over the next 6 to 7 years, until 2030, so pretty close, at least 1.2 trillion in market capitalization in the private startup ecosystem in Europe are created, and on the upper bound, an additional 3.3 trillion. So that's like, on average, it's more or less a complete DAX in Germany that's going to be up for grabs for all of us. That's why we are here. Now, why now? And that's also one of the reasons why I decided to make this step is after each kind of bubble and crash, the tech bubble, the global financial crisis, you had a massive uplift in IRR compared to investing before the crash. So on average, you would earn an additional 17.5% if investing after the last two crashes. So basically doing the contrary thing to what most people do. Why is this? Of course, because there are simply less investors. So at Redstone, we track millions of startups, founders, but also nearly every venture capital investor in the Western Hemisphere. And we've seen that of the new investors that joined 21 and 22, more than half of them have not done a single investment this year, so essentially until end of last week. So it feels lonely, maybe. But you know what? It's a good thing. Because alpha returns ultimately come from loneliness. If everybody thinks something is a great investment, the price will most likely have gone up, which means it's not a good investment anymore. And I think this is one of the most core elements. So if you're today talking to startups, if you're talking to VCs, remember that. So I want to finish with just saying I'm truly convinced we have an amazing potential. I think in the public you often don't see and grasp completely what's going on, especially in schools, universities, the potential we have. And I just want you to take away one sentence from this talk. Don't be a small bubble tea, but go for alpha. Thank you very much.